Hi, this is Julia Fulghum. I'm the director of Advance at UNM. Today, I'm going to help you think through some strategies and tips for preparing your mid-probationary dossier. I'm going to cover the fundamentals that apply to any level of milestone review, and then have a couple of slides on mid-promotion dossier preparation. Keep in mind, if you are scheduled for a mid-promotion review in the coming fall, the tenure extension policy gives you until the start of the fall semester to decide whether or not to proceed with the review. There are links to the tenure extension policy and the associated frequently asked questions document on the slide. I'm going to cover high-level fundamentals and processes. I can't emphasize enough that you should talk to your department chair early and often. Departments have their own expectations. Also, please keep in mind that I'm going to use research to mean research, scholarship, and creative works. You've spent a lot of time making decisions about all aspects of your career. And it's important to realize that you get to make a lot of decisions in terms of how you tell your story and what goes in your dossier. This is your adventure story. There are expectations from your department, your college or school, and the university, but this is your narrative, and you get to think about what you want the narrative to be. It's important that from the start you understand the expectations of your department and college or school. Some useful links are shown here. When I made this recording, the provost office did not yet have the 2021 P&T or promotion documents posted, but they're going to be similar to this past year's with one exception. And that is, as we'll discuss, you can write about the impact of COVID-19 in your research, teaching, and service statements. Arts and Sciences has a lot of useful documents up that step you through various aspects of this process. And regardless of the college or school you're in, you may find those useful. Not all colleges and schools have documents posted. For example, libraries, I know, has theirs on their intranet, and the College of Fine Arts goes by department policies rather than having a college policy. So make sure you're familiar with the policies you need to be. There are actually two different aspects of dossier preparation that you need to think about this summer. One is the part you're probably already thinking about, which is writing the research, teaching, and service statements. The Arts and Sciences Standard CV format also requires summaries of each of these. These are the more creative pieces of the dossier, and so you want to work on them when you're really feeling like you're inspired and motivated to get them written. People frequently struggle with these pieces, and they're the pieces we're going to discuss the most. There's a separate administrative component, as in there's a lot of organization and finding of information to do as part of the RPT software. The RPT software is what you will use to upload all of your dossier information. And what you'll find once you start to look at that is there's a lot of specifics like a defined file naming process, a specific format for your teaching evaluation. So you want to work on these pieces during the summer rather than leaving them to the last minute. But they can be things to work on when you feel like you need to make dossier progress, but you're frustrated or just too tired to think about it. So you can kind of iterate between these two and make progress all summer. To effectively tell your story, you need to know what the expectations are from your department and college or school. Everyone needs research, teaching, and service statements. The Arts and Sciences CV format also requires one-page total summary of these. Most departments expect dossier statements of about 3 to 5 pages. And honestly, committees outside the department at the college or school level and the provost committees are not going to be able to read statements that are much longer than that, just due to the sheer volume of work that they have. You may have already had to prepare your research statement for external referees, but if you haven't, you might want to talk to your department chair about whether you should prepare a separate, potentially more extensive research statement. The reason to do this is that you can have more technical statements that go to external referees than you would want to have for the dossier that's going to be reviewed internally. Departments have different approaches to this, so talk to your department chair. The other thing to think about is it can be helpful to have brief summaries of your teaching and service experience as part of the information going out to external referees. This provides the context for them in which you've been doing your research. The School of Engineering limits statements to 2 pages, and all faculty appointed after 2012 in A&S have to have a teaching portfolio. One difference this year is that you can write about the impact of COVID-19 in each of your statements. While for most of you, COVID-19 has provided a real challenge to your research and scholarship, many of you have been doing really heroic work in terms of getting your course material online and helping students. And you want to be able to write about this. How has this impacted you as a teacher and as a faculty member? Are you thinking about our students differently? This is your opportunity to explain what this has been like for you. And the ability to write about it in separate statements means you can perhaps write about it more positively in your teaching and service statements while addressing obstacles that may have come up in your research statement. Once again, make sure you're talking to your department chair and you are aware of college and department expectations before you start writing. Once you know what the expectations are, then you want to figure out what your narrative is going to be. Are you a rabbit or a duck? In general, committees want to say yes, and you can help them get to yes by telling a good story. And keep in mind, it's much harder to write a concise narrative than a long one, and so you want to give yourself time to do this. Sometimes, regardless of how accomplished faculty are, they can sit down and try and start staring at the screen to write up accomplishments and go, I don't know what to write. Boy, this determines my future. I don't know. Have I done anything? I think I've done things. Have I done things? And if you have one of these, or one of the many other reactions that are possible and that can provide some obstacles to your writing, deep breath. You are, in fact, good at stuff and things. You do have accomplishments. And if you're having trouble coming up with them, a couple of ideas here to think about. If you've been documenting your accomplishments all along the way, well, go through them and start to list those that might be the most significant. If you haven't been, pull out your annual reviews, any other review letters, and start to think about your accomplishments. I guarantee you have some, and start a random list. Don't worry about the scope or size of the accomplishment, just start a list. And then once you've got the list, you can go back and identify the significant pieces. Talk with a friend who knows your work and can help you brainstorm this, or join a dossier preparation group at Advance, and we'll help you with this. The goal is to have a list of 3 to 5 things that you want to emphasize, things you're happy about, proudest of, think are the highest impact, think are the coolest. And these are things you want to make sure you include, in addition to anything that you are expected to include. And this is then how you start to develop your story. Now let's specifically discuss preparing your mid-pro dossier. This review goes by a number of different names across campus, so you may hear it called a mid-probationary dossier, a mid-promotion, T3, or Code 3, depending on your department. One reason to talk to your department chair now is to learn about other departmental expectations. Some departments expect a seminar during the fall or maybe even early in the spring so that you can let your colleagues know about the work you've been doing. The dossier itself is very similar to the dossier you'll prepare when you apply for tenure, except there is no external review process this time. Your dossier will be reviewed and voted on within your department, by a school or college committee, and by a committee at the provost level. At each level, the chair and then the dean will prepare a recommendation that goes to the level above them. All of the faculty and committee votes and recommendations are advisory to the provost, who makes the final decision. You should receive the final notification by the end of June, so it's a long process, but you'll be notified of the department and college or school decisions along the way. Before you start writing your research statement, think about several things. Depending on the size of your department, this might be the first time your colleagues get to really see what you're working on. Also, the research statement will be read by committees in your school or college and at the provost level. So you need to write it for a general audience, at least for the first couple of paragraphs. So give the audience a context for your work. What motivates you? What are your goals? Do you have big questions you're asking? What impact do you hope to have? You can frame it using any one of these questions, so think about what works best for how you want people to appreciate your work. The document should be a mix of what you've done so far and what you are planning to do. This is particularly important for the mid-pro dossier when people want to really understand where you think your research program is going. If you're in a lab-based area or an area where you are expected to have a research group, keep in mind that establishing a functioning group is an important accomplishment, and so you should also talk about that. If you've had any delays or setbacks due to delays in getting equipment, due to delays in field work, being able to do survey work, human subjects research, either due to the typical sorts of things that can cause delay or COVID-19, this is the time to constructively address it and talk about how you're dealing with it. You can talk about and include works in progress. Just be sure you are accurate about the state of the article, book, chapter, proposal, whatever it is you want people to know about. Graduate student mentoring and any research-based accomplishments of your graduate students can be mentioned here or in the teaching statement, depending on how you want to talk about it. As with the research statement, remember that your teaching statement will be read by colleagues outside of the department. In arts and sciences, you'll need a teaching portfolio, which will provide additional opportunities to reflect upon your teaching. Be sure to provide the reader with the framework for your teaching so far. What's the audience and size of the classes? Are you teaching a class that hasn't been taught before in the department? Are you teaching a core class, a required class? The class numbers and titles aren't going to mean much outside of the department, so provide the context. Also be sure to talk about how you engage the students. What has worked best for you so far? Is there something you tried that didn't work that is causing you to rethink an approach? Is there something that has surprised you? What do you want to try next? This document should also include both what you've done and what you're planning to do, particularly if you'll be teaching a course again and have some thoughts on things you want to change. This is also an appropriate place to talk about any setbacks you've had and the impact of COVID-19 on your teaching. You probably learned a lot about yourself and our students as a result, and you should include that here. If you are mentoring students from other classes, from other departments, if students gravitate to you for support, you are contributing to student success and the educational mission of the institution. Include that in your teaching statement. As with the research statement, any work in progress you have in terms of articles based on pedagogy, any education-based research can be here if you did not include it in your research statement. Many departments protect assistant professors from service, so you may not have much to include in your service statement at this point. On the other hand, some of you are doing a great deal of service, either in your department or your community or both. Have pity on the review committee and don't just list the committees you've served on. Once again, have a statement about this. What types of service are important to you? What have you done so far? You may have some limited or extensive department service and professional service. In terms of professional service, you've almost certainly got plans for other things you want to do. Include them here. You should have a list in your CV. The service statement is the opportunity to write about a few things you've done or contributed to that have had an impact. And remember that in addition to preparing these 3 statements, there's a lot of administrative work that goes into preparing your portfolio. Talk to your department chair about this. Find out what the process is. Many, but not all departments want to see a draft package that will be reviewed by several departmental faculty or by the chair to make sure that your package is as strong as possible. So find out when the draft package will be reviewed and when the final dossier will be required to be turned in to the department. If you haven't already done this, start to list your accomplishments, any student committees you're on, your service, and get all of that organized and update your CV. Have you had peer evaluations of your teaching? Do you need to make sure there's at least one more in the fall before your package is finalized? Have that discussion with your department chair this summer. And the RPT database that you will upload your dossier into has file format requirements. So look at the file naming requirements and take care of that over the summer. And if there's an expected format for your CV, then make sure it's in it. And that's the basics. I hope this brief presentation has been helpful. Don't hesitate to reach out to your colleagues, your department chair, Advance@UNM, or Associate Provost for Faculty Success, Bill Stanley, when you have questions or need help. Be safe this summer and take care.